What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about my little green monster, and that is the Cobalt Kinetics Pro in the 12.5 pistol variant. When it comes to rifles and pistols, there's a couple things we have to keep in mind. One of which is not all rifles and pistols are built the same, and not all rifles and pistols are purpose built. Or I guess even more simply, you could say cheap isn't good and generally good isn't cheap. I guess that's something that I learned a long time ago building hot rods with my father. When you try to skimp out on a part and then all of a sudden your car breaks or just flat out doesn't run. I know personally in my life, I try to buy the best thing that I can afford because I can't afford to buy it twice. That doesn't mean I buy the most expensive. That doesn't mean I buy the least expensive. I try to find something right there in the middle. And that's kind of how I go through life, making larger purchases, because anytime you're buying a tool or something new, you want something that's gonna last you a long time so you don't have to buy it again. Now, if you don't know who Cobalt Kinetics is, I started to really hear their name a lot around 2 years ago. I had a very high opinion of the fit, the finish, the accuracy, and the overall quality of these pistols and rifles. So for that reason, I really wanted to test one out. Well, it took me 2 years to get one. I got one, here it is. And I have to say, after running this thing for the past couple of months, I can definitely see what they are talking about. All right, well, this specific Roscoe 12.5 right here has the new Sage Dynamics Roscoe 12.5 Patrol barrel. So I did a full video on this barrel. If you want to check that out, I'll link it down below, but it's a proprietary gas length that they specifically tuned in for this rifle, this buffer system and everything in here, and it runs sweet. And it's blast vertivice. It's packed off with their little muzzle device. But the reason I got this one in 12.5 is because I really wanted a 12.5 half that's supposed to be the best all around for size, length, ballistics, all that stuff. Not quite as short as a 10.5 where you start losing that, but if you don't get the gas system and the porting and everything just right on a 12.5, it can be a gas monster or just completely be a problem child and not run at all. So what they did here was awesome. So moving on into the rest of the rifle, because you can check the barrel video out if you want that. What exactly separates this Cobalt from your basic kind of standard, I guess, budget-friendly or really cheap AR? And that's what we need to talk about, because this is definitely a different class and a different level of rifle. The first thing to get out of the way is Cobalt uses a combination of their own machined in-house parts and then other tried and true combat tested parts like the Radian Raptor charging handle. Why reinvent the wheel if somebody already makes the best one on the market and you can't copy it because it's patented? So knowing that, Cobalt makes their uppers and their lowers. They are machined out of 7075 T6 aluminum, and they are absolutely extremely tight on the tolerances. They have just that right amount of looks and function. They come with that ambidextrous mag release on there, which I know a ton of people are huge fans of. A lot of people turn to the aftermarket for that. This one's built in and it comes standard on their Pro models. The lower receiver is going to have Cobalt Kinetics 45-degree ambidextrous safety, and I have to say, this one actually feels better than the Radian. And I don't say that lightly, because Radian has been my favorite selector for a great many years since I started seeing them first hit the shelves years ago. So that's a tough, tall order to meet, but they did it. The overall feeling of this thing, it's like it's on ceramic ball bearings, the way it activates, locks into place. It's just cleaner than any one I've ever tested. The upper receiver on this is very cool. It has that almost monolithic look to it with how that rail attaches into that upper receiver and how it connects, giving it kind of one of those like completely finished one-piece looks, even though it is a two-piece design. You have 8 very large fasteners securing that rail onto the upper itself. That rail is going to have 7 different lines of M-LOK for all of your attachment needs, whether you want lights, lasers, bayonets. You could pretty much put anything on there and still have room left for days. Even though this is a very short rail on this 12.5, you have plenty of room. You're going to have 4 different sling QD points on the rail itself, and that's going to match up with the QD backplate on the end. You're going to have choices of barrels from 6.5 to 16 inches on these things, whether it's going to be from Roscoe or Faxon, depending on your length. Both of those barrels are very well proven, and both of those companies actually make barrels for other companies who then relabel them under their own name. Depending on the model and variant, whether it's a pistol or a rifle, you're going to get a B5 Systems stock and a B5 Systems grip, or you're going to get a B5 Systems grip and an SB tactical brace, which you can see here on mine. Now, I will say the B5 Systems grips are some of my favorite because they have a very aggressive texture and they have a very neutral angle. It's not really aggressive like that old A2 stuff. The triggers in these are from Big G, Geisley themselves. This is the G2S, so it is a 2-stage trigger. And I'm sure many of you out there have spent plenty of money over the years putting a Geisley in everything you own, so you know how good those things are. Down below that trigger, you will have the Cobalt Kinetics custom trigger guard, and I have to say, this has a really nice feel to it. It's much wider and has a very nice radius to it, so your middle finger fits real high up in there, and it's extremely comfortable when you're grabbing onto the pistol grip in that firing position. And then of course, across the top, you're gonna have all the rail that you need, whether you're using a red dot, an LPVO, iron sights, whatever you want. You got plenty of room, lights, optics, whatever you want, you can put it on there. Getting into the guts of the Cobalt Pro here, let's start off with the Radian Raptor Light charging handle. That is one of my favorites. Gives you just enough to yank on that charging handle from either side. Doesn't add a ton of weight, and it's been well proven at this point. When it comes to the bolt and carrier group, it's gonna be 9310 and 8620 for the carrier. Both of those are well proven, and you're not going to have any problems with those for thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of rounds. The buffer system in here is going to be the much loved Volter tube with the A52 buffer system. And I have to tell you, this is one of the most well-balanced and softest recoiling 12.5s or 10.5s or anything in that kind of range that I have fired in a very long time. All right, you know what all has gone into this, so how does the angry little green monster perform out there on the range? So I ran this a couple of different ways. When I first got it, I just wanted to go out there and just kind of test it out, get a feel for it, which I sometimes tend to stutter with. So I just wanted to go out, have a good day, relax, and just get a feel for it. Ran perfectly. I ran 55 grain stuff. I ran 62 grain stuff. I ran my basic self-defense stuff through it. Didn't have any issues cycling any of that. It felt very balanced, and that recoil is exactly where I wanted. Two things that stood out on the Cobalt immediately for me were, I'm not a huge two-stage trigger guy, but when Geisley does something, it's just much better than I remember two-stage triggers being. The other thing is, out there when I was firing this under that recoil impulse, it felt like it was all one piece. So rather being a bunch of pieces assembled, the thing just recoils like it's one big solid piece, if that makes sense to you guys. I don't know if it has to do with the buffer system in combination with how tight the tolerances are, but it gave a much different feel than a lot of other rifles that I've had a chance to run. On the first range trip, I put several hundred rounds through it in very quick succession. And what that's gonna tell you is kind of how hot that thing is gonna get, just the right size. I know people love those, but when you run a few hundred rounds through a rifle very quickly, they tend to get really hot, especially if you're using a suppressor or you're in the state of Arizona where it's like 110 degrees right now. I will say it's got plenty of standoff. It still is nice and slim to where it's not like overly bulky or big, like a kind of an original quad rail. So it felt great. The controls on it from the selector to the mag release just seem to function like they were on bearings. Even just running the takedown pins in and out, you could definitely tell that when they machined this thing, every single part was paid attention to. It didn't feel like there was any burrs, any leftover like coatings, anything like that on there. Everything was just smooth from the first activation to the last. After that first day on the range of touchy-feely, kind of getting to know her a little bit, I threw on my L-back plate carrier from HRT and I went out and I really ran this thing. I got it nice and dirty with all this Arizona moon dust. I didn't oil it, I didn't clean it, I didn't lube it at any point during the process. I want to say I'm just over 1,500 rounds now, and the thing ran like an absolute tank. Even running just mag after mag after mag, the standoff on that rail was just enough so I could keep going and keep dumping rounds down range, and the thing ran without a hiccup. No matter whether it was cheap ball ammo, 62 grain stuff, green out there, I put through it that day, and it ran like a champ. And on a final note on how this thing ran, I tried to get some good footage of the ejection pattern of this thing. So that's one thing you want to pay attention to, especially when you get into shorter rifles or something that can have a tendency to be overgassed. And really violently overgassed, but still have a rifle where you could even run low-powered ammunition on it and function flawlessly. So if you check that ejection pattern, it's right where it should be, whether it was on the high-pressure ammo or even that lower-powered kind of 55 grain training ammo. As you can see from the footage of this thing out there on the range, the performance speaks for itself. The friend saver for the people to the left and the right of you, and it just looks sweet. So it's got the same look that your suppressor is gonna have, except it's just gonna divert all the blast forward. So that's made by JMac. Go over there, check those guys out, awesome people. The overall build quality of this Cobalt is top notch. I mean, literally everything from the fit of the lower, the upper, the rail, that monolithic look, the controls on here, just how smooth everything operates from the pins to the safety selector, the mag release, it literally just feels like every part that moves on this thing is gliding on ball bearings. And they really did it right with how they are building these. They control and make the parts they want, and they turn to the aftermarket for things like the charging handle from Radian, which is well proven and tested at this point. So why reinvent the wheel or try to make something on your own when there's already a really good option out there in the market? And quite honestly, the fit of this thing, I mean, it's just really something that you have to experience in person. So if you get a chance to see one of these in a store, even if you don't want it, just grab one off the shelf and try to turn the upper and lower. The thing is like it's bolted together. Literally feels like one piece, like I said, when you're firing this thing out on the range. So knowing that this thing is really nice and comes with a lot of really good stuff, what is our cost going to be on something like this? So depending on how you outfit these, they're going to be right in that $2,400 price point. And I know some of you may say that is pricey, but remember, anytime you're getting into a category and a level of rifle like this, when it comes with a $200 trigger and things like that, you're going to pay more than Palmetto State Armory prices. And that's not a knock on anybody. It's just a completely different level of build. It comes with completely different level of parts, maybe different machine work, and maybe a different level of quality control. And those are all things that you are going to pay for. And I know everybody may not be looking for that. You may not need a hard use rifle like this Cobalt. You may just need something to get out there on the range once or twice a year and have some fun with, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking for a hard use, reliable rifle that has the options you want, this is definitely one that you're going to want to look at, but you're also going to pay for it. And I know there's probably already people in the comments freaking out about how this brand is just as good as this brand, or they can build their own. All I would ask is compare apples to apples, right? You can't take a Knight's Armament or a Geisley or a Blackout or this Cobalt and compare it to a SIG M400 $850 rifle. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just a different level of quality, machine work, and quality control. So when you're making those comparisons, just do it apples to apples, not bolts to completely built cars. All right, so knowing all that, would I buy this with my hard-earned money, and would I change anything on this 12.5 Cobalt, because this is my personal one? Would I change anything? Yes, absolutely. That one change is going to be, I'm going to tax stamp this thing and make it an SBR, because there's nothing else I would change on it. I'm probably going to add some different accessories, but the way this thing is, it's awesome. I like the way it is. I even like the color. I didn't think I was going to like the green up front, but it kind of grew on me, so I think I'm going to tax stamp it, pay that $200 and put a stock on this and just go to work with it. Now, when it comes to spending my own hard-earned money on this, because this rifle was provided by Cobalt, would I buy this thing? Yes. So I have bought rifles far more expensive than this, and I have bought rifles far cheaper than this. It's one of those things where I'm not going to tell you what to buy. I'm going to tell you my experience with it. And I'm going to tell you my experience with other things compared to this, and you can make your own decision. If you're in the market for a very hard-use custom rifle like this is one to check out. It's right up there with all the other ones I've had my hands on, from Geisley to Daniel Defense, Knight's Armament, Blackout Defense, and a bunch of others. It really comes down to what brands you want, what options you want, and if you want to spend that kind of money, because there's good rifles that are cheaper, and there's really great rifles that are way more expensive. So spending money is always up to you. But if I was in the range of $2,000 plus for a rifle, and this was on the shelf, it's one I would probably pick up over some others. Well, that's what I have for you all today. Huge shout out to all of my Patreons. Make sure you get subbed up down below. And I'm really curious, what is your kind of premier AR? Something in that high-end kind of range. Maybe Knight's Armament, Geisley's, one of the more expensive ones. I know BCM is really good, but I'm curious to see what that next level is from everybody. So let me know in the comments down below. Get out there on the range, have some fun. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. I will see you all on the next one.